Castellanos has it, and the Phillies have the National League Championship. They have beaten the Padres 4-3, and they celebrate on their home turf as the Phillies are the 2022 NL champs.
From WHYY and Billy Penn, it is Hittin' season. I'm your host, John Stolnis from The Good Fight and Billy Penn. You can follow me on Twitter at John Stolnis. Coming up on this episode of the podcast, we will quickly recap the Phillies and Guardians series from the weekend in Cleveland. The Phillies narrowly avoiding a disastrous weekend by salvaging the win on Sunday. But I wrote a piece for The Good Fight this week that I want to talk about. We're going to get into the Phillies' Big Five, the Big Five stars, the free agents, and what their month of July has looked like, and really the fact that those guys kind of are the problem. It's nothing earth-shattering, but some of the numbers are eye-opening, and we'll do a lot of trade deadline talk here on this episode of the podcast, as well as we are just a little over a week. Actually, it'll probably be exactly a week by the time you listen to this podcast, and we'll talk about this Orioles series that the Phillies are engaged in right now as they're playing the series opener, trailing 2-1 in the top of the eighth as we record this. So joining me, as they do every week, my good pals Justin Klugh and Liz Roscher. Justin from Baseball Prospectus and The Dirty Inning on our Hittin' Season Patreon, and Absolutely Hammered on our Hittin' Season Patreon. Follow him on Twitter at Justin_Klugh. Justin, hi.
Probably like 10 years ago, Gene Segura was playing second or shortstop for the Brewers, and when Kyle Kendrick tried to steal second or tried to run to second, and Segura got the ball and dropped it, but hid that he dropped it, and the umpire was tricked and called Kendrick out, and there was like no review process at that point. And in that day, something inside of me died, and I just became so furious and helpless in that moment. And I really didn't feel that way again for a long time until tonight, when Aaron Hicks rolled that ball under his torso, and everyone just sat there waiting for Rob Thompson to do Mickey Mouse ears symbol and just check it out, check the call, because there's no reason not to. And suddenly I was just right back to watching Kyle Kendrick slide into second and that ball get loose. I didn't really know how to react. That was crazy. I can't wait to learn why that play was not reviewed by the Phillies. I look forward to the lie that we're told is the reason they didn't review that call, when really just, somebody, maybe Rob Thompson, curled up on a pile of coats and went to sleep. It's impossible. It's impossible anything else happened.
Well, it's a hot and humid night. It's very easy to fall asleep on a night like this. You really just want to find a nice quiet corner of the dugout, nestle yourself amongst like a nice burlap bag of balls. Maybe somebody drapes a nice big old school starter coat over top of you, and you can just nestle in. You don't need to worry about it. I mean, Rob didn't even play he played the Grapefruit League traveling team here on Monday night, so we weren't even expecting to win this game anyway.
We were tuning into a game on like the backfields. I forgot. He also fell asleep while he was writing the lineup too, I guess.
They're just trying to get Chris Sanchez some work today, and then that's what this game was all about.
A little bit of practice. It's not like he's giving them these stars that the Phillies are paying a lot of money for. Not like he's, giving them a chance to win by pitching the most innings that he has this season yet.
Yep. No, we're having a good time. As you can see, we're having a good time here on this Monday night in the middle of a hot and humid July evening watching Phillies baseball. That, of course, voice you heard was Liz Roscher, of course, from Yahoo Sports. Follow her on Twitter at Liz Roscher. And it is, folks, Elizabeth's 40th birthday on Tuesday. Let's give it up for Elizabeth Roscher. She's about to enter the best decade of her life.
Thank you.
Happy birthday, Liz. I mean, as someone in their 40s, I can tell you by experience, it is a fine decade.
Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed my 30s quite a lot. I did a lot. I saw a lot. I was happy and sad, and look back at my 20s when the Phillies were mostly good, and spent most of this decade with them being crappy, but doing nothing but writing about them and talking about them. So yeah, it seems appropriate. I'm spending the last out of my 30s watching them blow this Christopher Sanchez start.
How many Chris Sanchez starts has this team failed to take advantage of? I don't know what his run support is. I'll have to look that up tomorrow, but it can't be good. No. He seems to, every time he pitches well, they lose.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate.
I mean, when he's pitching,
better
it's like
than this.
Yeah, it's like they don't want to win. It's not even like they lose. It's just like, nah, we can't do it. We can't make that stand up.
Sorry, I had to yell at my son. He's outside.
Oh no.
Swinging on the swings in the pitch blackness outside, and I needed to get him in the house. I didn't realize he was out there.
Oh no.
Just look up and your son was outside.
Yeah, he's outside.
One time Aviva looked out that was like cleaning and looked up and saw through the window that our cat was like out outside the window looking back at her. And she was like, oh, that's not supposed to
That shouldn't
happen.
be. That shouldn't be.
Why is
Yeah.
that? Why?
Yeah, no, it's 9:00. It's 8:45. Let's get inside.
Yeah, they've
All right.
lost 4 of Chris Sanchez's last 6 starts.
That's crazy. As well as he's pitched, that's nuts.
He's gone at least 5 innings in 5 of those 6 starts. So yeah, he has been doing a 5th starter's job of giving them a chance to win in a part of the rotation where they're not getting dominant pitching. He's holding up his end of the bargain. The Phillies offense, when it's comprised of the 2016 Orioles spring training bench, is not gonna help you out a whole lot at the plate.
Josh Harrison is batting 6th in this game. Look,
What
I'm
is
all
he
for...
even still doing here? I'm sorry.
That's a
What
good
is
question.
he even still doing here?
I mean,
There's no reason.
I no longer believe Scott Kingery is a major part of this team, but you can't tell me that you can't get Josh Harrison off this team and get the same exact production from Scott Kingery and place him on the 40-man roster and at least maybe give you something with a little bit of upside, just something different. I can't take anymore Josh Harrison swinging at first ball pitches that are like 8 inches off the strike zone, hitting ground balls to second base when you're down by a run. Like that, you haven't earned that yet, man, where you can swing at that kind of a pitch on the first pitch. And I have no problem with giving some guys days off here and there. You can't have these veterans playing every single day. You got to give them days off. It's the day after a road trip, so you come back. You want to give a couple of these guys a day off after travel. That's fine. I get that. But man, Josh Harrison can't be your number 6 hitter. It just can't be. So that's part of the issue here. But the other part of the issue is even when these guys are when the lineup is optimized, this team is not hitting. And that was the big problem this weekend in Cleveland as the Phillies lost 2 out of 3 to the Guardians. And I gotta share a Twitter interaction that I had with folks because this blew my mind. Most of you listening to the podcast know that back in the day, in the late 90s, early 2000s, I worked as a producer for WHYY. And the show that I did every Thursday and Friday, I did the Mike Missinelli and Howard Eskin show. And so I was the producer, I was the call screener, and I got to work with those guys for a couple of years there. And I enjoyed working with those guys. I had a good relationship with them most of the time. They're volatile personalities, and that just kind of goes along with it. I got used to that, and that's fine. But I tweeted something on Friday because I think, like most Phillies fans, we're frustrated by this team. They get really, really hot. They get to 10 games over 500. And then you got this nice schedule in front of you where you're playing really some weak Central Division teams than the Brewers and the Guardians. And the offense that is filled with these 5 high-priced free agents that you went and got, none of them are hitting. And I'm going to run some numbers by you in just a second. And they're flailing and they're losing. And it's frustrating. You're investing 3 hours a night into this team. We're actually with the pitch clock now 2.5 hours of every night watching this team. And I tweeted during the Cleveland series, the Phillies really just don't let you get to a point where you feel really good about them. They're such a tease. I thought that was a pretty innocuous comment. Right? I'm not throwing fireballs from the clock tower. You know what I mean? Like I'm not here to try and blow this team up. Not like I did it when I was yelling about the Cubs series at the end of last year. Of all people, Mike Missinelli tweets at me in response, a man who spent 30 years on sports talk radio, going out of his way, as was his job, which I have no problem with, getting people riled up about sports, finding ways to get people interested and engaged and oftentimes angry about sports, tweets at me saying, come on, man, they're a playoff team. Relax. First of all, don't tell me to relax on Twitter. Don't tell me that.
Last seen dumping piping hot coffee into his crotch. Telling people to calm down, Telling me to calm down. First of all, the tweet, plenty calm. Not
fire this guy. I have never once said Trey Turner's contract was a mistake. I never once said they need to trade JT Realmuto, which of course you can't do because you have to live in the real world. You're not going to trade these high-priced veterans. You don't want to do that. I mean, that's just silly. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm saying this team, this Phillies team that we love and that we've watched, they take you on so many ups and downs. Just as you think they're really going to start to hit their stride, they stumble. They pull way back. They make you start to doubt again. That was my point. And of course he knows that. And I again, it boggles my mind. Like if some other person had tweeted that to me, I wouldn't have thought twice about it. But for a guy who spent 3 decades in the city doing sports talk radio, where your whole job is to get people fired up about the teams they cover, to tell me to relax about what I'm seeing. Like, you can't tell me that the feelings of frustration that Phillies fans have are not justified. They're not guaranteed the playoffs. I do think they'll make it, but this has been a frustrating team to watch. They've been making people upset, and it's viable. It's valid. You've got these 5 huge contracts, these 5 huge offensive stars, 4 of whom are massively underperforming this year. And the 5th, Bryce Harper, is doing everything but hit home runs. You can take that. I'm kind of not lumping Harper in with the other 5, but my goodness, this team is hard to love right now. And so that interaction blew my mind. And other people tweeted, and Miss and I was saying the same thing to them. Relax, they're a playoff team. Relax, they're a playoff team. Liz, I don't know which one of you wants to take that first, but I say that as a frustrated fan watching this team.
Maybe he's rebranding. You know, he also
into what?
A day ago he tweeted a picture of his dogs and said, "Hanging with dogs on a late Sunday afternoon. Nothing is better." And
I love a dog tweet. That's fine. Good.
He followed it with another tweet that was just pretty much the same picture of his dogs, but clearly several seconds later, and there was no text accompanying this picture.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is maybe he's just cultivating a chill vibe showing off how well he can use social media and Twitter. Clearly got the hang of it, and just putting a new version of himself out there. He's like, hey, this isn't the Mike Missinelli of old, all right? Whipping people into a frenzy. Mopping coffee off of his crotch on the air. Like, this is a man who has found a new gear, and that gear is neutral. And yeah, I don't even think it's not even like he's rolling slowly out of control down a hill. He's just there. He's just existing, man. He's just seeing this team, and he's seeing them struggle, and he is just, you know what? It's not worth it, guys. As Mike Missinelli, listen to Mike Missinelli, everyone, the voice of reason. Longtime
voice of reason.
Do we need to commit you? Send you away.
I struggle to understand it. And I know if Mike doesn't, I'm sure doesn't listen to this podcast. He has his own podcast.
Who knows what he does now?
But
he's a completely different person.
Maybe that's true, but I know the reaction is going to be if he hears it, says something like, hey, really glad you guys are able to use me for content and like kind of demean the podcast. Like, I know that's all coming if he hears, and I don't care. I'm fine with that. But I guarantee you also, he has no memory of me as his producer. I'm almost sure of it. No memory whatsoever. And it was a long time ago. I'm sure I was one of dozens of producers that he's had over the course of his time, and so that's fine. I mean, I get that, but I just thought it was a ridiculous position to have when you watch this team every night. Like, there's no way you can wrap your mind around the game on Friday where they lost 6-5, where they leave the bases loaded. I mean, they had the bases loaded 3 different times in that game and scored 1 run on a balk. And that was the only run they scored on those 3 different bases loaded opportunities. They get down 6-1, and then that's when JT decides to hit a 2-run home run or whatever it was at that point where it was just too late. Then they lose 1-0 on Saturday, getting only 2 hits in the entire game, totally wasting a phenomenal Zach Wheeler start. And then in the game on Sunday, they won that game, but didn't look great. They scored the go-ahead run because Cleveland lets a fly ball drop in the infield. Oh, and I forgot to mention in the game on Saturday, the only run the Guardians got was because Bryson Stott, Nick Castellanos, and Brandon Marsh couldn't decide who was going to catch a lazy fly ball to shallow right center field.
That was
the Phillies,
so cool.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man.
Anyway,
that was great.
this team has me in my feels, and it's just, and I don't know how you can watch this team and be engaged in this team and not feel the same way.
You are justified in your feelings. We're at that point in the season where we're tired of everyone. This happens every year. Whether, they tend to, sometimes they take a dip in August. Everyone likes to take a vacation in August. But no matter what, this is usually the time where we start getting really annoyed with everybody, no matter what it is they do. Because it's been months and months, and they've been inconsistent, and people aren't performing. We're entitled to feel this way. That being said, we need to talk a little bit about Mike Missinelli's Twitter feed.
Okay. Now, I haven't done a deep dive on Mike's Twitter feed. What are you seeing?
He does not tweet about the Phillies very often, but he tweets very often.
Mm-hmm.
He tweets a lot. He tweets a lot about politics.
Okay.
I'm not convinced he's even watching them. I think he's just stirring it up because he can, and he sees tweets and he thinks he just wants to respond. Because I think all he does for most of the day is tweet. Look, there's a lot, he's tweeting a lot. He's replying to a lot of people. It's alarming, the amount of time he spends doing this and maybe not watching the Phillies or tweeting about them in any way. He tweets more about the Sixers.
But if you weren't watching the Phillies like one summer and you had no idea what they were doing, but you were familiar with the team and its history, why would your assumption be that they're a playoff team?
Because he remembers last year. He remembers last year, and he knows what they added, and he can sort of vaguely see like the shape of them in the distance.
Oh my God. Imagine someone waking up from like a coma and having to explain to them that, like, yeah, the Phillies have JT Realmuto and Bryce Harper, and they just signed Trey Turner this year, and just being like, oh yeah, so that's fine, that should be great, that's fine. Like, how's Trey Turner doing? And you have to be the one to be like, oh man,
oh by the way,
oh, like so bad.
Mike Missinelli, if you disagree with me, let me tell you, you are allowed to say it. Prove it.
We thought he was back like 6 weeks ago, but it turns out that was just like a fun weekend. It's it's a total bummer to have Trey Turner on your team, apparently.
Yeah, I got some stats on Trey Turner coming up here in just a few minutes, but let me step away from the precipice here for just a minute, and let's talk about the one really big positive that came out of the Guardians series, and that is Bryce Harper and his play defensively at first base. What a phenomenal debut he had in the game on Friday and the game on Sunday defensively at first base. I, for one, because they kept pushing it back, I was really starting to doubt that it was going to happen. It just sort of felt to me that Harper wasn't feeling comfortable about the idea, that maybe they were getting cold feet about it. They were getting closer and closer to the trade deadline. I wasn't sure, how much longer they could do that, but he looked phenomenal defensively at first base. And I think even just with these two games, it has opened up the trade field for Dave Dombrowski to go out and get the outfielder that he had talked about getting if they felt good about Harper at first base. And Liz, I mean, that catch into the well, the dugout well, or whatever that thing is called, the camera well. That's what it is. When he fell over in like the second inning of the game on Friday.
Terrifying.
Terrifying, but
objectively terrifying. But
no doubt about it.
Once he goes all out, no matter what he does. So seeing him just go for it was encouraging, and seeing him get up and not harm himself was even better.
Yeah, he had a moment before he dove in there, which was really reminiscent of a Shane Victorino catch too, by the way, just to give you the idea of what kind of player with what kind of mindset makes a play like that. And Harper went over, and there was a moment before he jumped where he was clearly he checked with himself, and he was like, I'm not afraid to die, and he leapt right over that fence. And there's a version of that where he just breaks into a million pieces when the guy who got Tommy John and came back irresponsibly early goes elbow first into a camera well. Fortunately, it wasn't the elbow.
It was the other elbow. Yeah, thank goodness. I noticed that too, by the way. Yeah.
But in the moment, all you're seeing is an elbow, and it's Bryce Harper's elbow, and it's plummeting. And you're like, how is that possible? He was on the earth just moments ago. But yeah, there were plenty of examples of him being a, like I've called him before, liquid baseball, where he just fills whatever space you put him into. And yeah, I think it was nice to be able to think of this as a productive development in a weekend that felt anything but, because even when they managed to win a game, it was just you sat down and watched the highlights and were like, oh boy, they are not back. Like that was a zig instead of a zag, and that was the other team not coming through with a sweep. The Phillies did not really take that game by the horns by any stretch.
No, it was nice to see the offense put some runs on the board in the 10th inning, but then it looked like they were going to give it away. Huge shout out to Junior Marte, who came in with the bases loaded, nobody out, a run in, the Phillies leading by 3, but he comes in and gets strikeout, and what was it, pop out or whatever it was, or strikeout. He got 3 straight outs. Oh no, it was like ground out, pop out, whatever it was. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. 3 straight outs with the bases loaded in order to get out of that jam with the winning run at the plate, 3 straight hitters. And it was Cleveland's best hitters to save that win. His best performance of the season. I still don't trust him, but that was certainly a big time moment for Junior Marte after Craig Kimbrell blew his first save of the season with that 9th inning home run to tie things up. And you can't get mad at Craig Kimbrell. I mean, you're going to give up a home run every once in a while. You're not. Brad Lidge's perfect season was amazing for a reason. You're going to have some bad luck here and there. It was the Phillies' 7th blown save of the season, by the way. It was the 7th blown save in a row the Phillies have actually come back to win, which we've talked about that stat before. Just pretty incredible that that happened again. And thankfully for the Phillies, it seemed like every other National League wildcard team except the Reds had a horrible weekend. The Giants were swept by the Washington Nationals. Hello.
Ooh.
Yeah. The Diamondbacks were swept by the Reds, and the Marlins lost 2 out of 3 to the Rockies. So the Phillies came into the series against Baltimore just a half a game out of the wild card, and really just 1 game from the top spot. All these teams are within 1 game of each other. 5 teams for 3 spots, all within 1 game. They're essentially all tied. It's just 5. It's a free for all. These five teams for 3 spots here for the wild card. So that at least the Phillies didn't get buried by playing poorly over the last week or so. But we got to get into the Big 5. The Phillies college basketball scene has had the Big 5 for forever. We really, the Phillies' Big 5 are the Big 5 free agents that they've signed over these last few years. You've got Bryce Harper, Nick Castellanos, JT Realmuto. JT Realmuto they got in a trade, but then re-signed as a free agent. Kyle Schwarber and Trey Turner. These big money guys they brought in to be the heartbeat of this team's offense. And they have been the problem for this team this year. It's not that the daycare have gone above and beyond what we were expecting of them this season. But it is these 5 stars that have underperformed. Harper less so than the other 4, when you consider Harper has had to learn a new position defensively, coming back from Tommy John surgery 2 months early, and the rest of his stats outside of his home runs are all still very, very good. But when your cleanup hitter has 4 home runs on the season, that can be a problem too. So I'm not killing Bryce Harper. Of all these guys, gets absolved the most. But for Castellanos, who has hit the skids here in July, JT Realmuto, Trey Turner, and Kyle Schwarber, it's been ugly. In the month of July, Kyle Schwarber has a 190 batting average, a weighted runs created of 76, striking out 30% of the time. Trey Turner, 247 batting average in July, 293 on base, weighted runs created of 89. Nick Castellanos, 173 batting average in the month of July with a 195 on-base percentage. JT Realmuto, 246 in July with a 302 on-base percentage. Weighted runs created of 109, which I'm not sure how he's an above-average offensive player here in the month of July with that slash line. It's just, the numbers are awful. I wrote a story for The Good Fight. If you want to have more numbers at your disposal that will really make things stand out, I'll give you just a couple more. Since May 19th, JT Realmuto is hitting 198 with a 281 on-base percentage. And I will say this, I mentioned Gene Segura a couple weeks ago on the podcast. We thought we were getting a big upgrade offensively from Gene Segura to Trey Turner. We were counting on that, right? Trey Turner, coming into the game on Monday, had played 98 games this year. Gene Segura last year for the Phillies, because of injury, played 98 games. I'm going to compare their stats. Gene Segura hit .277. Trey Turner's at .249. Gene Segura had an on-base percentage of .336. Trey Turner's is .301. Gene Segura had a slugging percentage of .387. Trey's is a little better at .390. But OPS, Gene Segura, .723. Not good. Trey Turner, .692. Not gooder. OPS plus for Gene Segura last year, 106. OPS plus for Trey Turner, 89. Gene Segura last year was worth 1.8 wins above replacement. Trey Turner's been worth 1.3. So I am not saying the Phillies should have kept Gene Segura, because Segura has been brutal this year for the Marlins. But this puts into context the struggles that Trey Turner has had this year. He's been worse than Gene Segura was last year. And so my question to you, Justin, is do you think Trey Turner will figure it out this season, or are we looking at a 2022 Nick Castellanos scenario?
Well, at this point, it's not even a baseball issue anymore, right? Like, this is something beyond that. It's not like there's a strategist or a baseball lifer who could approach Trey Turner and be like, what you're doing wrong is this. Like, if that could have happened, it would have happened by now, right? Mm-hmm. Like, this has got to be something else, something that's only Trey Turner's going to be able to fix. And if we're really stuck in another only way out is through moment, then yeah, we're in the second half, man, and he's still not here. So that's just gotta. I'm willing to say this is a year-long experience. I think it's insane. I think it's going to make people absolutely lose their minds about free agents coming to Philadelphia and start marking in a first year that is completely lost. And I think people will just start using that as like a new curse, because how does that happen twice? That's the really crazy part. These things have nothing to do with each other. It's not like he got a yips soaked towel left by Alec Boehm somewhere and like suddenly he can't play baseball anymore, and it's the same towel Nick Castellanos touched. Like, this isn't biological. I don't know how. Like, I just don't get it. Like, just do what you were just doing. It's not even like last year. The World Baseball Classic, he was playing like a unbelievable MVP, and then it was just gone. So yeah, this is beyond baseball. This is psychological or something, some other level that it needs to be addressed if he's going to resemble anything like the baseball player he was signed to be.
Yeah, Liz, I'll ask you the same question, because it's just. They keep saying his swing looks better, but he gets up, and especially when he gets up with runners in scoring position, that's like the last guy you want up there right now. 671 OPS with runners in scoring position this year. He's striking out 27% of his plate appearances with runners in scoring position. Is he the last guy you'd want to see up at the plate with the game on the line right now? I mean, I ask that honestly because I'm really struggling to think of someone I would an everyday regular that I would want to see up there any less than Trey Turner right now.
I mean, I can't disagree. Right now, he's bad. I mean, he got
maybe Real Muto.
Yeah, it's you know what? It sucks that there's more than one answer to that. Yeah. There should be one answer, and it should not be one of the guys that we're being forced to talk about here. I don't want to see him up. I don't want to see Real Muto up. But right now, like, Trey Turner got thrown out on Monday night. He didn't get thrown out. He got ejected.
He got kicked out of the game.
He got kicked out of the game. He was 0 for 3. I think he had one error, maybe two errors, something like that. It was
like tonight.
It was no, that is tonight.
Yeah, that's what she's talking about. Yeah,
my bad.
Everyone
Monday meaning tonight. Yes,
yes.
She time-stamped it for people who might be listening on another night.
Yes, well, for everybody who'll be listening tomorrow, probably.
That's correct.
Which is today for all of you. Is everyone
Wait
confused?
a minute. Yeah, this is like we're in the Spider-Verse now. I'm not sure what's happening.
Thanks, I'm fully caught up. I totally understand everything that's going on. So,
but it was a brutal night, and he really didn't do anything that was beyond the pale. He asked the umpire, who had just called strike 3 that was, I think, definitely not in the zone, but I'm not an umpire, I guess. He asked where it was, and he threw him out. I don't think he said anything terrible, but because his first his first response was, "For what?"
Yeah.
Like he's not asking that sarcastically, I don't believe. So it was actually a relief and a blessing. You know, actually, as I'm looking at the game now, I have it on next to me. The Phillies have tied it up. Mm-hmm. Bryce Harper is a key player in this. He is making himself. Just to go back to Harper for a second, he's making himself valuable in ways that I don't think we imagined. Yeah, the power isn't there, but he's still a good baseball player. A player who looks into the void of possible, enfeeblement and says, "I'm going." That's the guy that you're paying this much money a year. That's why you're paying him. And so I absolve him of all of this. If he's being productive and he's helping.
Dusty
The same cannot be said of Trey Turner right now.
Dusty Wathan would have had to throw himself into Harper's legs to stop him there. And even then, he might have just gotten chewed up like a wheat thresher if he had even tried.
Yeah. Harper was going to try to score on that play no matter what. Yeah, and that's then Harper does that. He gets thrown out on the bases because he gets aggressive. And
he did not care, by the way.
No.
He popped up and screamed in triumph at everybody at home plate. He didn't care. It was glorious, to be honest.
He's had a weird week. I know he's been sick, but obviously the Hobie Milner at bat we've talked about, and he drove in a run in the game on Sunday with a dribbler up the first baseline that he thought was foul and never ran out of the batter's box. But Kyle Schwarber scored on the play because umpires called it a fair ball. Bryce, they're throwing the ball. The Guardians were throwing the ball around the infield a little bit and kind of got away. Harper, if he'd run, he might have gotten to first base, but he also thought it was foul and was just kind of standing around.
Well, there's nothing. If you think it's foul, it's not like you
You're not
hit
gonna
a weak grounder. Like he runs out pretty much everything, and he certainly did tonight, if for any reason, because of that.
Yeah. I'm just saying, it's been a weird week. He's had a weird week, and not necessarily. It's just been a little bit bizarre. And I think we look at this offense and we know that people can yell at Kevin Long, the hitting coach, and all that. Kevin, I don't know what the hitting coach can do. And it was kind of the same way with Milt Thompson and Greg Gross when the Phillies stars, when Ryan Howard and Chase Utley and Rollins Victorino would slump, because that definitely did happen during that glory run. We forget about that. But 2010 and 2011, they were not great offensive years for those teams. They struggled for long stretches, just like this 2023 team does and like the 22 team did last year. But there's not a whole lot you can do with these veterans other than maybe move them down the lineup. Not so that you're like reconstructing the lineup to make guys at bat and this guy. But if guys are really struggling, you don't want them to get more at bats than the guys who are doing better. And it might behoove Rob Thompson to shake things up at the top of the lineup, just so Kyle Schwarber's not getting the most plate appearances of anybody else on the team for a little while. And so Trey Turner isn't getting the most plate appearances. I would rather see Bryson Stott, Brandon Marsh get some of those extra plate appearances simply because they're having better at bats than those guys are. But it also makes you realize this team's biggest need at the trade deadline, and we are a week away from the trade deadline, is getting an outfield bat. Bob Nightingale of USA Today reported that the Phillies want Tommy Pham from the Mets, which again, just depending on what you think of Bob Nightingale, that might possibly mean the Phillies want no part of Tommy Pham.
Yeah, I'm glad he was the one that said that. Honestly.
Thank God.
I don't think there's any one of us that are enamored with Tommy Pham. I know he's having a good season for the Mets, 827 OPS, 9 homers, 1.7 wins above replacement.
How many 30 to 35-year-old guys do you want to see come here and not hit? From
the Mets specifically, because every time the Phillies have acquired a Mets player, like in the last decade, really, except for Zach Wheeler, they've been awful. Remember Asdrubal Cabrera?
Yeah, I do. It still gives me the shivers.
Angry. Still to this day, I'm violently angry about him joining the team because he was just stinky. Ugh.
Yeah, and I don't know that he's the best dude in the world. No. I know he got into a fight with Jock Peterson over a fantasy football disagreement a couple of years ago, and that could very well have been just as much Jock Peterson too. But I know I think he was stabbed outside of a nightclub at some point in the last couple of years.
Yes, I do believe that's true.
And last year, after joining the Reds as a free agent, he said that he was only concerned with getting his stats. Something along the line of, I got to get mine in order to get another big free agent contract the next year, which...
All right, so again, the Phillies know this stuff too, And
I would think
if Bob Nightingale's to be believed, they know it and they still love him. I don't buy that.
Yeah.
Like, I actually don't even believe that is
I
true.
don't
Yeah.
buy it a whole lot either. But so I guess I wanted to ask you guys. I have a list of possibilities for outfielders that they could trade for. And let me run down the list. I think obviously Juan Soto would be the dream get. Of course, it would probably cost you. They might, with Andrew Painter looking like he's going to be out for a year and a half, they might not have the prospects to do it now. It probably would have required trading away Andrew Painter. Maybe not. Maybe Mick Abel's enough, but I don't know. Cody Bellinger seems to be the guy that everybody is really enamored with. He's the lone left-hander on the team, on among the guys I'm going to mention. Has a 918 OPS that's just beneath Juan Soto, 14 homers. He plays good defense. 2.8 wins above replacement. And then there's some other guys. Brent Rooker is a guy who plays for the A's. We saw him a little bit when we were in Oakland. 800 OPS, 16 homers. Doesn't play great defense out there. He's been worth 1 win above replacement, but a decent pop from the right side. And then you're looking at guys like Teoscar Hernandez, who has really struggled with the Mariners this year. 296 OBP from him. 16 homers.
Stop saying who has really struggled on your list of people the Phillies want to put on their baseball team.
Please. Please.
I say all this because there are not a lot of, like, people are running down different names. I go, the Phillies need somebody with some pop. There's nobody out there that's really like that other than Juan Soto and Cody Bellinger. And even Bellinger's not like a homer hitting guy. Like, he'll hit you one every now and then. But Hunter Red.
Isn't Bellinger kind of most famous for being the, like, lights out, incredible MVP of the Dodgers and then falling off a cliff and not being that player again for the rest of his career? Okay.
Correct.
Cool.
Correct. But I think he dealt with some back injuries. And so there was, I think, an issue there that maybe he's gotten past that. I don't know. But he's definitely having a renaissance season with Chicago. He seems to be the guy that Philly fans really like. I don't think people are enamored with Hunter Renfroe and Randall Grichuk and some of these other guys. I don't know which of do those guys, do any of those guys interest you at all? Like, I mean, it's Cody Bellinger and pretty much nobody else. I don't know. Is that accurate?
Essentially, yeah. I mean, it's just, I said the other day that I don't think the thing the Phillies are going to do is something anyone's really thought of yet or submitted yet. I think that they're just down on that level where there's more guys available for what they want to do because they're not trying to make a big move, like a huge move. I'm thinking medium at most. And that's really what that should be enough. It's, God only knows if it will be based on how underperforming this team has defined itself to be. But yeah, I feel like somebody on Bellinger's level is about the height of the kind of move they would make. And like we were saying, Harper playing first kind of clears up exactly what move, like what their strategy will be or will likely be at the trade deadline. But yeah, as far as who it is, I think you're looking at the same level of really how they addressed it last year, where they brought in people that no one had really linked them to for a long time, at least, and who didn't have the highest profiles. They were just people Dave Dombrowski targeted because he thought they could help and they wouldn't cost the Phillies. They were people the Phillies were going to be able to trade for. So, yeah, I feel like something's coming, but I don't think it's going to be the massive deal that we've cooked up in the Juan Soto fantasy chats.
Yeah, no, I think, we could talk about different proposals and packages that could potentially get Juan Soto. But first of all, I don't think the Padres are going to trade him. That's the first thing. And Liz, second of all, I really do think you would have needed Andrew Painter to get that deal done because he's not a rental. You would have had him for next year too. And that kind of guy doesn't come cheap, So Mick Abel's pitched well of late. Maybe you could do something around Mick Abel. I think Cody Bellinger is a more reasonable get. I'm not convinced the Cubs are going to trade Cody Bellinger. I'm seeing some stuff. Maybe they extend Cody Bellinger given the fact that he has played so well this year.
Let us all not fall for these tricks. I don't know if the Padres are going to trade Soto, but I feel confident that if the Cubs are offered enough lottery tickets, they'll trade Bellinger. Anything about them thinking, we're not going to trade, we might extend him. That's just, people are just trying to drive up the price. Just remember, that is what this is about. A lot of these sources are agents trying to, and teams trying to, let us evaluate things on a level of, do they make sense, as opposed to, does this seem realistic from does this really seem like something the Cubs would do right now? You need to judge it on a sensible basis, as opposed to what is the agent of Cody Bellinger or the Cubs trying to say so they get better offers.
I get that. You're right. And I do think Cody Bellinger will get dealt. I think that's something that one, because they could always, if they like him, they could re-sign him in the offseason. There's nothing against that.
Exactly. They're not. Do we see them really going anywhere? I really don't. They're not a very good team.
No, and I think there has to be some realism there. So I certainly have come around on wanting Cody Bellinger. Of all the right-handers there that could interest me, I wonder if Teoscar Hernandez, who has been very good when he was with the Blue Jays the previous few seasons, whether he's just having trouble in Seattle. It's a tough place to hit, tough place to play sometimes. You're kind of pretty far away from everything. He might do better with a change of scenery. He does have 16 home runs and 55 RBIs, so even though he's not getting on base, he's driving in a lot of runs, but again, not a high batting average, high on base guy. The Phillies seem to have a lot of those different guys on the team. Brent Rooker is kind of interesting with an 800 OPS and 16 home runs. I'm not sure what that would cost. I don't know that you want him to be your long-term solution in left field, but there's just not, outside of Juan Soto and Cody Bellinger, the rest of the options there are not awesome. Now, they wouldn't cost you much probably, but they're not phenomenal. So I think you're right, Justin, and I hope you're right in that there's another name out there that we're not thinking about. Maybe there's a young player like a Brandon Marsh type guy who none of us were talking about at the trade deadline last year, that he is identified to think maybe we can get something more out of this guy than he's given the team that he's currently with, and that team might be souring on that young player or have another position player they want to bring in. I don't know. It's gonna be kind of interesting. I did want to play one trade proposal for everybody that got sent in to us by our listeners. And again, for the midweek podcast, I want everybody, if you've got a trade proposal, pretend I'm Dave Dombrowski and you be the GM of the other team, and record a voice memo on your phone and send it to hittinseason@billypenn.com. It's super easy. Just give me a trade proposal and we'll talk about it. Thomas Smith sent in this trade proposal for us to consider from the Mets.
Hey Dave, it's Billy Epler from the Mets. I wanted to offer you a 2-for-2 trade, Carlos De La Cruz and Jalen Ortiz for Jose Quintana and Tommy Pham. Let me know what you think.
All right, so Justin and Liz, let's all be Dave Dombrowski here for the moment. His trade suggestion, Carlos De La Cruz, who's having a very good season in Double-A as an outfielder for Reading, really hitting the ball hard, and Jalen Ortiz, who stinks. He's been terrible. He's the guy that the international free agent that they signed for like $4 million like 5 years ago when he was 17, who just has not been able to put it together, for Jose Quintana and Tommy Pham. I think we've already kind of talked about Tommy Pham and our desire to kind of go in a different direction. And that's kind of still where I am. I would not do this only because I don't really like Tommy Pham a whole lot. And Quintana has been out the whole year. He just came back now and made his first start of the season a couple of days ago and was fine. Was fine. I like Jose Quintana. I kind of wanted the Phillies to sign him in the offseason. I don't mind trading Carlos De La Cruz and Jalen Ortiz, but I don't like either. I don't really like that deal.
Yeah, I would kind of make that deal and think, why am I bothering with this? I don't feel like I'm being rewarded in any real way, but I also am not alarmed by what I'm giving up, so why do this trade at all? And like you said, the return there is just a batter I'm not interested in and a pitcher who's barely played. So yeah, I would say no. I would not seek that trade out.
What do you think, Liz?
Strong agree. No. Like for a guy, I mean, I could see why you'd put that together, but I don't even know if they would take that for, if Jalen Ortiz is that bad, why is he included?
You're bad.
You're not trading that guy. Everyone stop including terrible, terrible players in your trade proposals.
Yeah, and the Mets are not going to take one decent outfield prospect and one terrible outfield prospect. Like, you're gonna have to throw a pitcher in there if you're gonna do that deal.
Nope.
Like,
exactly.
so
That makes no sense.
That's a deal the Phillies make if like 4 other trade ideas fall apart.
Not
Yeah,
even
I think
that,
that's
really.
right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think if it's a last resort, I think they know they need to get some help. If Tommy Pham's like their only option and that trade's out there, then I could see that, Justin. I think in that way, I agree, because I think they got to. I'll say this about Tommy Pham, I think he's better than nothing. And if all you're giving up is that, then that's probably worth doing.
I think it's like that's a trade you make when you're prioritizing making a trade more than you're prioritizing addressing your needs.
Right.
And that's that kind of trade.
And that's not always the best way to go about it. And Dave Dombrowski, I don't think generally makes trades like that, but
He's not
I
a
think
guy who makes a trade just because it's out there.
Right, but if really the big problem is Kyle Schwarber's defense out in left field, and we saw from the game here on Monday night that that's a big problem.
Woof.
You do have Johan Rojas, who has had a very good game here on Monday night, and Christian Pache was playing very well. I don't know how good those guys are, and it's kind of shaky to rely on them. You're going to see a lot of Jake Cave if they don't make a trade, which again is not great. So you might see Dave Dombrowski make a deal just looking at what he's got and saying, I don't think this is sustainable. But I don't know. We'll have to see. I mean, we're going to hear a lot of names come up over the next few days. And I kind of hope, like you said, Justin, that maybe there are some names out there that we haven't thought of yet. All right, wrapping things up here. Let's really talk really quickly about this Orioles series. The Phillies taking on the best team in the American League. Shockingly, the Baltimore Orioles came into the series 61-38, best record in the American League. They took 3 out of 4 from the Rays over the weekend. They have 5 members of their everyday lineup with an OPS over 800. It's really incredible what they've done. Adley Rutschman, the catcher's awesome. Gunnar Henderson, a 22-year-old third baseman's phenomenal. Left fielder Austin Hayes. Cedric Mullins is great when he's not on the injured list. Anthony Santander is a phenomenal right fielder. Their DH Ryan O'Hearn's really good. I don't think the pitching's awesome, but it's the bullpen is phenomenal. Like, the starting pitching is their weak point. And if Baltimore is going to make a move at the deadline, it's to go get a starting pitcher. But their bullpen has the highest wins above replacement in baseball. Felix Bautista is a monster. I mean, 0.92 ERA on the season with 28 saves. Forget about it. If this game's close late, the Phillies are going to have a hard time. They do get Kyle Gibson on Tuesday night. Remember, everybody was talking about how great Kyle Gibson started off the season. Kyle Gibson, over his last 9 starts, 6.02 ERA, mirroring what he did last year with the Phillies. Was real hot, and then in the second half just kind of fell apart. But this should be a fun series, Liz. I mean, this is a fun up-and-coming team. Even though, this Phillies game on Monday night has been shaky at times, it's been super entertaining. Like, there's been a lot going on.
Oh, yeah, there's been a lot going on. There's been a lot of screaming and in both agony and excitement, then agony again. So this game is probably about to end momentarily, so we'll have more on it in a moment. I'm really excited about the rest of this series. I wish I could go and see it, but I'm really distracted by watching the game. I'm sorry, it's very riveting. JT Realmuto just didn't screw up. He worked a walk. Everyone, maybe this is the turning point.
Well, the Orioles are great. The Orioles are always pretty fun to watch. It was actually great watching them in the Dodgers series they played recently, where they just came out and put 4 runs on the board really quickly, and it was like when everyone saw Knives Out and felt legally compelled to tweet that it was fun. Everyone in that same moment was just like, wow, the Orioles are fun. And then they gave up a grand slam and lost that game. And then they got shellacked the next day too by the Dodgers. So, it is possible to beat them, but they have a head full of steam right now, and they are a lot of fun to watch. And they are not the team you want to be playing when you yourself are trying to turn around, or who is the Cleveland Guardians. They're a good team to beat when you're trying to gain some momentum, even though their entire lineup is from NFL Blitz. But yeah, they're a fun team to beat. The Brewers are a fun team to beat, but the Phillies struggled with them, and they're going to struggle with these Orioles as they did tonight, because they are it's always great when the Orioles are a good team, because it means that somebody's in the AL East who isn't immediately detestable just based on who they are. But playing them is not going to be pleasant,
Yeah, and the Phillies did lose this first game of the series 3-2. Before we sign off, we just let's talk real quick about the night Philly Rob had. As you mentioned just a second ago, some of the stuff not challenging the Rojas ball in the third inning that Aaron Hicks looked like he might not have caught. You look at the lineup that he put together. We talked about that, how this was not a lineup where he was really prioritizing winning. I guess you got to do that every once in a while, but I don't know if you have to do an entire shift change like in hockey for a lineup. Maybe you rest like one or two guys. I think he just figured, let's get all the guys rest one night instead of spreading it out over the course of 3 games. You can make an argument that maybe that gives you a better chance to win the series overall, but it was a pretty non-competitive lineup here in the game on Monday night. Not challenging the Rojas ball in the third just makes no sense. You just make the challenge. He did not hit for Edmundo Sosa with Alec Boehm in the 8th inning. Sosa came to the plate with runners on first and second and nobody out. Now, Sosa did line out to the third baseman. It was a line-out double play, but you had Alec Boehm sitting there, who's your best hitter with runners in scoring position, and instead you let Edmundo Sosa hit, and he hit into a double play. And then in the 9th inning, they had Schwarber on base. You could have run Brandon Marsh for Kyle Schwarber in that situation, which would have meant Marsh is in left field, or Johan Rojas, but it would probably have been Marsh in left field for that game-winning double that the Orioles hit. Just not a great night for Philly Rob here on Monday night.
A strange night. It's not. It just doesn't even feel like yes, these are all decisions, but it almost feels like they weren't. It feels like they were just incomplete ideas. Like I let the guy who shouldn't be in left for defense late in the game still be out there. I didn't pick up the phone and make the call. It was just like it was more absence than poor strategy, and that's so strange. All of this stuff piled up in one night. I never think about what questions a manager is going to get asked after a game. After a typical game, it's a lot of the same kind of patterns and narratives getting drawn. But like after this game, there's questions that need to be answered.
Lots of questions.
No one had an answer during the game for why they didn't challenge that call. And these other follow-ups deserve answers too. So I'm very curious to see what his thought process here. I don't think we're going to be satisfied by whatever his answers are, but man, I just want to at least know why these things happened to the way they did, because this was a really bad night for Rob Thompson.
Yeah, it did not have to go this way. There were multiple points where it did not have to go this way. And unfortunately, they lost. They tried hard. Most of them did at the very end there. That's just not enough, unfortunately.
No,
it's just not enough.
You're going to hear a lot about that ball Kyle Schwarber didn't get to, but he did get to it. He went all out on that. You can't hate on him for his effort on that, but he just shouldn't be out there.
Yeah,
it's not like he misread an easy fly ball. Like, that's just a play he can't get to. And I don't know that Brandon Marsh makes that catch, actually. As I watched it again, are we sure Marsh makes that diving catch?
Of course not, but he obviously has more of a chance.
He has more of a chance. There's no doubt about it. I
mean, he missed that ball by less than an inch, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, maybe just
went off his glove.
It went off of his glove. He was
That's true.
Almost there. And just that little extra oomph that Marsh might have been able to give it, I think could have actually gotten it done. Which, I mean, and I say that knowing that we'll never know. But when it's that close, you have to imagine that the likely outcome just makes you want to stamp your feet a lot.
Yes, it does. Yeah, it's a frustrating game. And again, this is why, Mike Missinelli, that I have a hard time wrapping my arms around this team with the way they're playing right now. They're very frustrating, and they do maddening things that really make it hard for you to say, yeah, I'm on board, because, you start to get on board. It's like you're trying to get on it's like you're trying to jump on a moving horse carriage. Back in one of those Western films, and they just, you get on and you're and then you get knocked off by whoever else is trying to keep you from getting on the stagecoach. Or it's a terrible analogy, but
all
that's
right, John,
that's all I got.
Here's what you do. All right, you get your dog, leash your dog. Meet me and Mike down at the park tomorrow morning. We're gonna do some outdoor yoga. We're gonna do some nice stretches. We're going to hand out some pamphlets about the gyro truck we're going to open together. And you can just be a part of that. And you can just have a calmer, more soothed mind, and it's gonna lead to a more healthy mindset. You just gotta relax. All right.
So I can be condescendingly told to relax. I think you're right. I feel better already, Justin.
How
with
you
that in mind,
feel is wrong. I can't stress that.
It is. Well, tell me how you feel, Justin, as you deliver your final thought for the night.
Liz, do you know who you share a birthday with?
Who? I know I share a birthday with Estelle Getty of the Golden Girls.
Nice.
Close.
And Mannequin, the movie.
Close.
Yeah.
I was going to say the clubhouse rat himself, Billy Wagner. Took him over 10 years to get out of the first round of the playoffs. Not till 2006 when he was with the Mets. And at that point, when Wagner was on the biggest stage he'd ever play on, what'd he do? Well, he allowed 7 hits and 5 earned runs and 2 2/3. Good enough for a 16.88 ERA in the NLCS. And maybe you'll recall how that series ended with Carlos Beltran watching strike 3. A moment Beltran's own team owner would be mocking him about still 5 years later. So your birthday buddy, Billy Wagner, would never be back in the League Championship Series again after that. He had a quote published on his birthday, which is also your birthday, in 2010 when he was with the Braves. And he said, "I have one thing to gain in this, and that's a World Series ring. It seems like everybody else has got one, and I don't. Well, my birthday Eve gift to you, Liz, is telling you that you and Billy Wagner have the same number of World Series rings."
Oh, that's
that
beautiful.
makes me feel excellent. Thanks, Justin.
Blow out your non-existent World Series candles there, Liz. Yeah. You also share a birth date with Matt LeBlanc, Ileana Douglas, and Walter Payton, just so you know. All right. Liz, your final thoughts, birthday girl.
So over the past 10 years, the Phillies have played 9 games on my birthday. Anybody want to take a guess at their record?
I'm 9 games. I'm going to say 2-7 there, Liz.
Yeah, there's at least one win. I know that. I'm going to go 1-8.
They are 7-2 on my
Oh,
birthday.
wow.
Whoa. All right.
other way
Win
with it.
incoming against Kyle Gibson tomorrow.
Yep. So we'll see. It's been they didn't play a game on my birthday in 2019. My 30s started with a loss against the St. Louis Cardinals. 2015 was the no-hitter against Cole Hamels. I was at that 2013 game. I
wow.
don't believe if I was at any other, it was in 2017, the only other time they lost against the Astros, because I have not seen them win in person on my birthday in quite a while. But I'm looking forward to what happens tomorrow, because they've won a lot of games on my birthday in a decade of sucking. And if I have to sacrifice wins on my birthday for the next 10 years to get a little bit of satisfaction in the playoffs, I'm willing to make that trade.
Well, that's very noble of you, but I don't think it's a nice birthday present, Phillies, for you to lose to Kyle Gibson on Liz's birthday.
Pick
I
up
don't
the
think
phone,
that.
Phillies. Pick up the
come
phone,
on.
Dave. Liz is ready to make a deal. Why aren't you?
It's a fair question. Fair question for Davey D. I did not refer to him as with the initials like I did before. Remember I've learned my lesson about that.
I just call him Diamond Dave.
Diamond Dave. That sounds good to me.
There is
All right,
no
look,
risk of slipping up there, man.
Correct. I'm watching myself. All right, episode 696 in the can. Thanks everybody for paying attention to this podcast and allowing me in my non-relaxed state to podcast here to you. I want to remind you guys, don't forget the Hittin Season Patreon, patreon.com/Hittin Season, and of course our partners at WHYY and Billy Penn. Make sure to check out billypenn.com each and every day for the best news of Philadelphia, and our landing page there is billypenn.com/Hittin Season. You can find all of our stuff there with regards to the podcast as well. Thanks guys for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time here on Hittin Season.